All right, Facebook peeps, we are back again. I'll probably delete the other video in a fit of, I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I started videoing this video to talk to you guys while I was navigating to my destination on my phone, which means I could no longer see where I was going. So we were going to have a very long and pointless, a long conversation while I went kind of anywhere at random. Instead, I bailed on the stream, and now I've got the nav up on the in-car navigation system, which is weird. I don't usually use it, but now at least I can see where I'm supposed to be going and talk to you at the same time. You'll have to pardon me for not looking directly at the camera very much. I'm trying to not die. So where were we? Okay, so let's pretend the other video's not here. Let's start over. Where I'm going today is I'm going to meet a business partner, and we are going to go and look at material for some projects that are coming up. And then we're swinging by the Maker Depot in Paterson, New Jersey. Now, Maker Depot, for those of you who are not really familiar with the idea, is imagine a workshop that had a lot of the tools you can't afford that you always wanted, or a lot of the space you can't afford, and you can just pay the money and go and use the space. So the one in particular that we have a membership at has a small Tormach. It's a computer-controlled multi-access CNC mill. They have a large, super large computer-controlled router table. They have a full woodworking shop. They've got a welder. They've got a welding shop. They have a bunch of 3D printers, which I don't really think I'll be using as much as you would think. I own 3D printers, and with some of the prints that I run, doing 4, 5, 6 hour prints, it makes a lot more sense time-wise for me to not be there waiting for those prints to run and taking up that machinery when I can just run them at home while I nap or while I do other things. They also have a 3D printer that I don't own right now, which is what's called a resin 3D printer. So it, instead of spitting molten plastic onto the thing and kind of building it up like a sandcastle, a resin printer is a pool of liquid plastic that cures, gets hard when it's hit by ultraviolet. And then they have a UV laser, and they just kind of, the tank is there with a clear bottom, and you draw what you want on the bottom of the tank, and that bottom little tiny bit of resin gets hard, and then you lift it up and new liquid resin sort of flows underneath. So now the solid piece you had is like hanging just a little bit above the bottom, and you hit it with another laser and draw the next piece, and you lift that up. So what you're making winds up coming out suspended from the sort of movable building surface. It's a pain in the ass. It's expensive because the resin is expensive. The machinery's finicky. The lasers are a little weird. But the beautiful thing is your resin is A, incredibly strong, and B, the laser is obviously just light, so it can be very, very accurate. Anyway, they have a resin printer there, which is very cool. I look forward to using it for those things that I need that sort of resolution on. And most usefully right now, one of the places I'm going to look at does countertops. So I'm going to be pricing whether they have any material that works for the countertops I need for my upcoming desk, right? Because we're only looking at like 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks maybe before delivery. And I still have the tops to figure out what I'm going to do with. And then once I get the raw material, I will probably take it to the Maker Depot to get it drilled, drilled for the holes I want in it, and then shaped the way I want. I'm not 100% sure what that build surface is going to be yet. Anyway, so that's sort of a catch up on what I'm doing today. What I wanted to talk to you about, though, aside from that, something that was really kind of interesting to me was on Friday, Thursday or Friday, I guess it would have been Thursday, I was, flipping through YouTube, and one of the kind of keywords I check out for every now and then is motivational speech compilations. It's a little bit of a crutch, I know, but I get a real kick out of them. And sometimes you come across an interesting tidbit that you didn't have before. And in this case, I came across a video that I will link in the comments somewhere along here by, it was a compilation of speeches by Matthew McConaughey, of all people. And at somewhere in some awards dinner, he was talking about the difference between happiness and joy, the way he saw it. And the concepts I had of this distinction, but I never really used the word joy. I'd always been thinking in terms of happiness and contentment, or happiness and peace, or happiness, and I guess other people would use the word gratitude as well. And in speaking with some other folks, it turns out that this dichotomy between happiness and joy is a distinction that's made often in religious communities. And I hadn't really thought of that, since I never spent an enormous amount of time in highly religious communities, though I was raised Catholic. So the distinction goes like this. You can think of happiness as a transactional emotion, right? So let's take a sports metaphor. We're going to go and play against another team, and if we win, I will feel happy, right? I'll be joyful. I'll be happy if I win. If I don't win, I will probably not be happy. Let's keep the variables small, right? In theory, I could also be happy if we lose the game, but I meet an old friend or something. But let's say for a moment that we're only looking at this one event, winning or losing the game. If I win the game, I'm happy. And if I don't lose the game, I'm not happy, or maybe even sad. But if you go through your whole life just focusing on the emotion of happiness and that transactional high that comes from an event making you happy, and when there's no event that's affirmatively and positively moving your way right now, then you don't feel happy, and maybe you're even sad or depressed, then depression is something that's going to chase you around. Just to head off the comments, I'm not trying to make some point that all depression is easily solved by whatever. Just keep it to yourself. I don't need the lecture. I get it. You know what I mean? Depression's horrible. I'm not here to solve it for you. And then we can contrast that with joy. I'll use the word joy. Joy is an emergent state of feeling, right? So joy would be a state of existence, not a momentary thing. So joy comes from, in this context, joy would come from living your life in accordance with your goals and ethics and desires, right? And dreams. And what that means is, as long as do I enjoy playing the sport? Do I like my teammates? Do I feel like I played as well as I could that day? Did I feel prepared? Had I practiced? Was my dedication there? Am I proud in a sense of how I acted, how I got here? If that's true, then even if we don't win the game specifically, I can still feel joy. I can still be happy about the afternoon and the event. I can feel happy about my life, even though the actual game was a loss. And that means that, joy is entirely within my control then, right? Joy is how I'm living my life, the decisions I'm making in accordance with my goals. Whereas happiness is maybe then in this way of looking at things outside my control to an extent, right? I can raise my chances of winning that game, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to win that game. Maybe the other people on my team don't show up. Maybe the other team has someone who's just a much, much better player than we are. Maybe I'm going to turn off my turn signal until we're ready to go. Maybe, anything could happen that keeps me from winning that game, even if I'm doing the best I can. And if the only time that I feel good about my world would be when I'm sort of at the mercy of things that are not entirely in my control, then you're in for a really bad time. Whereas if you focus more on this idea of joy, which comes from doing everything in your power to live your life in a way that you find congruent with your goals and ethics and desires, then that is entirely within your control. So joy may come and go. You may have days where you're, in blissfully happy. I'm sorry, happiness will come and go. You may have days where you're blissfully happy. You may have days where you're really sad. But you have the ability to sort of level set this base concept of joy. And again, other people think of it as gratitude. And I guess gratitude would be appropriate if I thought these things were coming from someone outside, a spirit or a higher power. But since I don't, since I feel these things are entirely within me, then gratitude's probably not the emotion that's really the one that makes sense to me. But joy does, though I tend to think of it, for me, it's not joy per se. It's just a feeling of peace and contentment. It's the source of what everyone around me on occasion talks about as my sort of stupid, blind optimism, in the sense that I'm always pretty sure that, it's going to work out. And when I say that, I don't mean that it'll work out and we'll be happy. I just mean it'll work out and we'll be okay in the end. And maybe that's because I never feel like I'm at risk of losing that baseline, that underlying baseline joy, because no matter what happens around me, I can always react to it in a way that's in line with my nature and my goals and my ethics. And as long as that's true, then I can always feel content in my actions. And that means that I have a source of contentment, and in this case, joy, that depends on nothing outside of myself. And when you say, so maybe that's why it's silly, why people react so badly when other people say happiness is a choice, but joy is. Or maybe more to the point, joy is the result of your choices. It's the manifestation of the myriad choices you make all the time about how you're going to approach the world around you. And I want you to take a look at the choices you're making, because you can absolutely make choices in pursuit of happiness that will act against your joy. God, this sounds so hippie, frou-frou. And by that I mean, maybe I'd be happy if I won that game, and maybe the easiest way or the only way to win that game would be to deliberately injure the player on the other team who's kicking our ass. You know what I mean? And could I do that? And if I did do it physically and we win the game, would I be happy? Like, would I maybe I'd be the kind of person who would feel happy about that win. But we would have absolutely crushed any potential I personally would have had for feeling good or joyful or content in my actions. And it's, and you can see how that the relentless pursuit of momentary happiness can absolutely rip the foundation out of any chance you have of contentment or joy in the longer term. So anyway, I want you to think about that. We're coming up on 15 minutes, which is about my limit for these videos. I will probably stop back in later on this evening and let you know if I bought a, material for my desktop or whatever. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a fantastic weekend. We still have to talk about some other stuff. So expect another video tomorrow, either here or on one of my other channels. I will talk to you guys later. Have a great day, everybody.